The blood-red sun dipped below the horizon as Wyatt Andrews spurred his exhausted stallion across the rugged Wyoming territory, the distant howls sending ice through his veins. It wasn't the approaching night that troubled him, but rather what those howls meant for anyone unfortunate enough to be caught in the open as darkness fell in the spring of 1875. Wyatt had been riding hard for 3 days, leaving behind the trouble in Cheyenne that had forced him to seek new prospects further west. At 32, he'd seen enough of both the war and the lawless frontier to know when it was time to move on. The bounty on his head wasn't substantial, just enough to make staying unwise after he'd killed that cattle baron's foreman in self-defense. No witnesses meant no justice, at least not for a man like him. The howls grew closer, more frenzied. Wyatt reined in his horse, Thunder, at the crest of a rocky ridge. In the fading twilight, he spotted movement in the small valley below, figures huddled against an outcropping of rocks. His keen eyes narrowed as he made out a woman clutching something to her chest, desperately swinging what looked like a broken wagon board at several dark shapes circling her. Wolves, at least 6 of them, moving with the precision of hunters who knew their prey was cornered. "Damn it all," Wyatt muttered, pulling his Winchester rifle from its scabbard. He had places to be, people to avoid, and complications were the last thing he needed. But he couldn't ride away, not from this. The woman screamed as one wolf lunged forward, testing her defenses. Wyatt could now see what she held: a child. Couldn't be more than 3 years old. His decision made, he kicked Thunder into motion, descending the ridge at a dangerous pace while firing a warning shot into the air. The wolves scattered momentarily at the sound, giving Wyatt precious seconds to close the distance. 2 of the bolder ones turned toward this new threat, lips curled back to reveal yellowed fangs. Wyatt took aim and fired, catching the lead wolf in the shoulder. It yelped and retreated, but the others weren't so easily deterred. "Get down!" he shouted to the woman as he rode between her and the pack, firing again. This time, his bullet found its mark, and one wolf collapsed to the ground. Zara Lawson clutched her son tighter against her chest, her heart hammering wildly as this stranger on horseback positioned himself as a barrier between them and certain death. She'd been traveling west with a wagon train when a broken axle had separated her from the group. Her husband Thomas had gone for help 2 days ago, leaving her with their son Caleb and a promise to return quickly. He never did. "Stay behind me," the stranger called out, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. Zara pressed her back against the rocks, shielding Caleb with her body. 3 wolves remained, circling warily now, intelligent enough to recognize the threat, but hungry enough not to abandon their prey completely. Wyatt fired again, grazing another wolf, but not bringing it down. The wounded animal retreated slightly but didn't flee. His ammunition was limited. He couldn't afford to waste shots. One wolf, larger than the others, the alpha lunged suddenly from Wyatt's left. Thunder reared in panic, nearly throwing him from the saddle. The wolf's teeth snapped inches from the horse's leg as Wyatt fought to control his mount while bringing his rifle to bear. Too close to aim properly, he swung the rifle like a club, connecting with the wolf's skull with a sickening crack. The animal fell back, dazed but not defeated. It shook its head and circled again, more cautious now. "Do you have a weapon?" Wyatt called to the woman, not taking his eyes off the predators. "Just this," she responded, raising the splintered board she'd been using. "And a small knife." Wyatt nodded. "If they come at you, aim for the eyes or nose. It's your best chance." The standoff continued as darkness enveloped the valley. Wyatt knew the wolves had the advantage in the night. He needed to end this now. Carefully, he reached into his saddlebag and pulled out his last resort, a small flask of whiskey with a rag stuffed in the neck. It was a trick he'd learned during the war, one he hoped he wouldn't need to use. "I'm going to create a distraction," he told Zara. "When I do, I want you to run to my horse. Can you ride?" She nodded, determination hardening her features. "I grew up on a ranch." "Good. When I signal, you take my horse and your boy and ride hard up that ridge. There's a trail leading west. Follow it." "What about you?" Zara asked, her voice barely audible. Wyatt's lips formed a grim line. "I'll be right behind you." He struck a match against his saddle and lit the whiskey-soaked rag. The flame caught immediately, casting an orange glow across the rocky ground. The wolves backed away from the sudden light and heat. Wyatt hurled the makeshift torch directly into the pack, where it shattered, spilling burning liquid across the ground and onto one unfortunate wolf's fur. The animal howled in pain and panic, its coat ablaze as it ran in chaotic circles before disappearing into the darkness. The distraction worked. The remaining wolves scattered momentarily. "Now!" Wyatt yelled, dismounting in one fluid motion. He helped Zara onto Thunder's back, passing up the small boy before pressing the reins into her hand. "Go!" Zara hesitated for only a moment, her eyes meeting his in the fading firelight. "Thank you," she whispered, then kicked the horse into motion, clutching Caleb securely with one arm while holding the reins with the other. Wyatt turned back to face the wolves, his rifle ready. The alpha had regrouped and was watching Zara's escape with predatory focus. Wyatt fired, missing the alpha but drawing its attention back to him. The wolf snarled, gathering itself to spring. Wyatt took careful aim, knowing his ammunition was nearly spent. He squeezed the trigger just as the wolf launched itself at him. The bullet caught the animal in mid-leap, sending it crashing to the ground mere feet from where he stood. The remaining wolves, seeing their leader fall, hesitated. Wyatt fired one more shot into the air, and that was enough to convince them. They retreated into the darkness, their howls fading as they sought easier prey elsewhere. Wyatt exhaled slowly. The danger passed, but his troubles far from over. He was now on foot in wolf territory with night fully upon him. Looking up toward the ridge, he could no longer see Thunder or the woman and child he'd just saved. He hoped they'd made it to safety. With no other choice, he began the long walk up the ridge, following the same trail he'd pointed out to Zara. The moon provided just enough light to see by, though the shadows seemed to shift and move around him. Every sound made him tense, his hand never straying far from his pistol. Zara rode hard for almost a mile before realizing the stranger wasn't following. She slowed Thunder to a stop, listening for sounds of pursuit, either human or wolf. Hearing nothing but the gentle whisper of wind through pine trees, she turned in the saddle to look back down the trail. "We can't leave him," she whispered to Caleb, who had finally fallen asleep against her chest, exhausted from their ordeal. "He saved our lives." Making her decision, Zara guided the horse off the trail to a small clearing sheltered by trees. She wouldn't risk riding back into danger with Caleb, but she could wait here. If the stranger survived, he would come this way. If not, she pushed the thought from her mind. Dismounting carefully to avoid waking her son, Zara arranged her tattered shawl into a makeshift bed on the soft pine needles. She laid Caleb down, brushing his dark curls from his forehead, before turning her attention to their surroundings. The horse Thunder, she'd heard the man call him, needed rest and water. A small stream trickled nearby, and she led the animal there to drink. As Thunder lowered his head to the water, Zara caught her reflection in the moonlit surface. She hardly recognized herself. 3 days of fear and exposure had left her face dirty and drawn, her once neat blonde hair hanging in tangled strands around her shoulders. "What are we going to do?" she whispered to herself, thinking of Thomas and the life they'd planned in Oregon. Now he was gone, likely dead, and she was alone with their son in the wilderness, dependent on the mercy of a stranger with danger in his eyes. The sound of a branch snapping brought her spinning around, heart in her throat. She reached for the knife at her belt, then relaxed slightly when Thunder merely raised his head rather than showing signs of alarm. "Hello?" she called softly, not wanting to wake Caleb. "It's just me, madam," came the now familiar voice of her rescuer. He stepped into the clearing, rifle still in hand but lowered. "Glad to see you made it safely." Relief washed over Zara. "I was afraid the wolves might have—" "Takes more than a few hungry wolves to finish me," he said with a slight smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He approached Thunder, patting the horse's neck affectionately. "You've been riding him well. He's particular about who sits in his saddle." Zara studied the man properly for the first time, tall and lean, with shoulders broadened by years of hard work. His face was weathered by sun and wind, stubble darkening his jaw. But it was his eyes that held her attention, deep blue and guarded, revealing nothing while seeming to see everything. "I'm Zara," she offered. "Zara Lawson. The boy is my son, Caleb." "Wyatt Andrews," he replied simply. "You're a long way from anywhere, Mrs. Lawson." She explained their situation, the wagon train, the broken axle, her husband's failure to return. I waited as long as I could, but our food ran out. I thought I could make it to the next settlement on foot, but I got turned around in these hills. Wyatt listened silently, his expression revealing nothing. When she finished, he merely nodded. You should get some rest. I'll keep watch tonight. Thank you, Zara said, for everything. We would have died if you hadn't come along. He shrugged uncomfortably, clearly unused to gratitude. Anyone would have done the same. No, she said quietly. They wouldn't have. Wyatt made no reply, but moved to tend to Thunder, removing the saddle to let the horse rest properly. Zara returned to Caleb, lying down beside her son and pulling him close. Despite her exhaustion, sleep didn't come easily. She was acutely aware of Wyatt sitting against a tree several yards away, his rifle across his knees. Watching the darkness beyond their small haven, morning came with bird song and golden light filtering through the pine branches. Zara woke to find Caleb already up and exploring the clearing under Wyatt's watchful eye. The boy seemed to have taken an immediate liking to the taciturn cowboy, showing him rocks and pine cones with the enthusiasm only a 3-year-old could muster. "Mama," Caleb called when he noticed she was awake. "Look what Mr. Wyatt gave me." He proudly displayed a small wooden horse, roughly carved but recognizable. Zara sat up, brushing pine needles from her hair. "That's very nice, Caleb. Did you thank Mr. Andrews?" Caleb nodded vigorously. "He made it with his knife. Can he come with us to Oregon?" The innocent question hung in the air. Zara glanced at Wyatt, who was busy repacking his saddlebags, pretending not to have heard. "Mr. Andrews has his own journey," Zara explained gently. "But he's going to help us find our way back to the wagon train first. Isn't that right?" Wyatt paused in his work. "The nearest settlement is Fort Laramie, about 2 days' ride east of here. Your wagon train will have continued west, but there's a good chance any search parties would be coordinated from there." Hope flickered in Zara's chest. "Do you think there might be search parties looking for us?" "Wagon masters don't like losing people," Wyatt replied. "Makes for bad business, but it's been several days, and they have schedules to keep." He didn't add what they both knew, that the odds of Thomas returning were virtually non-existent. "Then we'll go to Fort Laramie," Zara decided, rising to her feet and brushing off her dress. She had no better options. They broke camp quickly. Wyatt insisted that Zara and Caleb ride Thunder while he walked alongside. The morning passed in relative silence, broken only by Caleb's occasional questions about everything from clouds to jackrabbits that darted across their path. By midday, the terrain had changed from rocky hills to rolling grassland. They stopped by a small creek to rest and eat from Wyatt's limited supplies, jerky and hardtack that Caleb complained about, but ate hungrily. "Where were you headed?" Zara asked as they sat in the shade of a lone cottonwood. "Before you found us, I mean." Wyatt chewed thoughtfully before answering. "Montana, maybe. Heard there's ranch work up that way." "You're a rancher?" "Been many things," he said. "Soldier, ranch hand, scout, bounty hunter for a spell. Never stayed in one place long enough to call it home." "That sounds lonely," Zara observed. Wyatt's eyes hardened slightly. "It's simple. Simple suits me." Zara wanted to ask more, but sensed his withdrawal. Instead, she watched as Caleb splashed in the shallow creek, momentarily carefree despite their circumstances. "He's a good boy," Wyatt commented, his expression softening as he watched the child. "Strong, like his mother." The compliment warmed Zara unexpectedly. His father wanted him to be a farmer. Thomas had dreams of our own homestead in the Willamette Valley. "And you? What did you want?" The question caught her off guard. No one, not even Thomas, had ever asked what she wanted. "I just wanted my son to grow up safe and happy," she said finally. "Though I admit I never imagined doing it alone." "You're not alone right now," Wyatt said quietly, then quickly stood. "We should keep moving if we want to make decent ground before nightfall." They continued east, the landscape becoming more familiar to Wyatt with each passing mile. He'd traveled this territory extensively during his time as a scout for the Army, knowledge that now served them well as he led them toward Fort Laramie. By late afternoon, dark clouds had gathered on the horizon, and the air grew heavy with the promise of rain. Wyatt scanned their surroundings with growing concern. "There's an old trapper's cabin about a mile ahead," he said. "We should shelter there for the night." "That storm looks mean." The first fat raindrops began to fall as they approached the cabin, a simple one-room structure built of rough-hewn logs. It had clearly been abandoned for some time, but the roof appeared sound, and the stone fireplace would provide much-needed warmth. Wyatt helped Zara and Caleb inside before returning to secure Thunder under a lean to attach to the cabin's side. By the time he re-entered, rain was drumming steadily on the roof, and Zara had already begun clearing cobwebs from the small space. "Not exactly the Palmer House Hotel," Wyatt commented wryly, setting down his rifle and saddlebags. Zara smiled. "It's dry and has walls. After sleeping under the stars for 3 nights, it might as well be a palace." While Zara entertained Caleb, Wyatt built a small fire in the fireplace. Grateful to find dry wood stacked in the corner, the cabin slowly warmed as rain continued to pound outside, occasionally punctuated by distant thunder. Their dinner consisted of the last of Wyatt's jerky supplemented with wild onions he'd gathered along the trail. It wasn't much, but it quieted their hunger. Caleb, exhausted from the day's journey, fell asleep almost immediately afterward, curled up on a makeshift bed of blankets near the fire. Zara sat beside her son, gently stroking his hair. "I keep thinking about Thomas," she said softly. "What his last moments might have been like, whether he suffered." Wyatt stared into the flames. "In my experience, it's best not to dwell on such things." "And what is your experience?" Zara asked. "You've known loss, haven't you? I can see it in your eyes." For a long moment, Wyatt said nothing. Then, as if coming to a decision, he reached for his saddlebag and pulled out a battered tin cup and a small flask. He poured a measure of amber liquid, offered it to Zara, who shook her head, then took a sip himself. "I had a wife once," he said, his voice low. "Sarah, and a daughter, Emma. They died of fever while I was away fighting in '63. Didn't even know they were sick until I came home on leave and found 2 fresh graves behind our cabin in Kentucky." Zara's hand went to her throat. "I'm so sorry, Wyatt." He shrugged, a gesture that failed to disguise the pain still evident in his features. "It was a long time ago. War took a lot from everyone. Is that why you wander? Because there's nothing to go home to?" "Maybe at first," he admitted. "Now it's just what I know. The open country, new horizons. No attachments, no disappointments." "No joy either," Zara observed quietly. Wyatt looked at her then, really looked at her, seeing beyond the dirt and exhaustion to the woman beneath strong, perceptive, beautiful, in a way that had nothing to do with conventional standards. Something stirred in him, something he'd thought long dead. "There are moments," he said finally, turning back to the fire. "Like tonight. A roof, a fire, decent company. It's enough." The storm raged outside, but inside the cabin, a different kind of tension grew unspoken but palpable. When Zara finally retired to sleep beside Caleb, Wyatt remained by the fire, keeping watch and keeping his distance from emotions he wasn't ready to acknowledge. The morning brought clear skies and the realization that their provisions were completely exhausted. While Zara and Caleb prepared for the day's journey, Wyatt took his rifle and disappeared into the surrounding woods, returning an hour later with a pair of rabbits. "Breakfast?" he announced, already setting to work skinning them. Zara watched with a mixture of gratitude and admiration as Wyatt prepared the meat with practiced efficiency. "You make surviving look easy," she commented. "Nothing easy about it," he replied. "Just necessary." After a meal that Caleb declared better than hardtack, but still yucky, they resumed their journey toward Fort Laramie. The rain had left the ground soft, slowing their progress as Thunder's hooves sank into the mud. By midday, Wyatt's brow was furrowed with concern. "What is it?" Zara asked, noticing his frequent glances at the sky. "We're being followed," he said quietly. "Have been since morning." Zara instinctively tightened her hold on Caleb. "Wolves again?" Wyatt shook his head. "Men, 3, maybe 4 on horseback, keeping their distance for now. Who would be following us? We have nothing worth taking. Horse thieves, maybe, or worse." Wyatt's hand rested on his pistol. "Could be the men who are after me." Zara stared at him. "After you? What men? Why didn't you say something before?" Didn't think they'd track me this far, Wyatt admitted. Had some trouble back in Cheyenne. A man died. It was fair he drew first, but his employer disagreed. You're a wanted man, Zara said, the words a statement rather than a question. Only by those with money to spend on vengeance, Wyatt clarified. The law's not involved. This revelation should have frightened Zara, but instead, she felt a strange calm. What do we do now? Wyatt considered their options. Fort Laramie is still a day's ride, too far with them on our tail. He pointed to a line of bluffs to the northeast. There's a Sioux trading post in those hills. Man named Two Feathers runs it with his French wife. Good people. We might find help there. Zara nodded, trusting his judgment despite the new complications. They altered their course, Wyatt now leading Thunder at a quicker pace. Caleb, sensing the adult's tension, remained unusually quiet. As they approached the bluffs, the terrain became more difficult. Rocky outcroppings and steep inclines that would be challenging for riders in pursuit. Wyatt used this to their advantage, choosing paths that would be hard to follow. By late afternoon, they caught their first glimpse of the trading post, a substantial log structure nestled against the hillside, with smoke rising from its chimney. The sight brought visible relief to Wyatt's face. We'll be safe there, he assured Zara. Two Feathers doesn't take kindly to trouble at his door. As they drew closer, a tall man emerged from the trading post, a rifle held casually but ready in his hands. His dark hair was streaked with gray, his face lined with age and experience. Behind him stood a woman with graying blonde hair pulled back in a practical braid. That is far enough, the man called out, his accent revealing his Lakota heritage despite his excellent English. State your business. Two Feathers, Wyatt called back. It's Wyatt Andrews. We met during the treaty negotiations at Fort Robinson 2 years back. The man's stern expression softened slightly. The scout with the good whiskey and better stories. I remember. He lowered his rifle. Come closer, friend. Wyatt led Thunder forward, explaining their situation briefly, the rescued mother and child, the men in pursuit. Two Feathers listened gravely, then turned to his wife. Marie, prepare food for our guests. They look half-starved. To Wyatt, he added, your pursuers will not find this place easily if they do not know to look for it. You can rest here tonight. The trading post's interior was warm and well-appointed, filled with goods for trade furs, beadwork, practical items for settlers and natives alike. Marie, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and capable hands, immediately took charge of Caleb, cooing over him in a mixture of French and English while preparing a hearty stew. Zara sank gratefully onto a bench, the weight of constant fear finally lifting slightly in this haven. Thank you for taking us in, she said to Two Feathers. We've imposed on Mr. Andrews' kindness for too long already. Two Feathers studied her with knowing eyes. The wolf who fights to protect the she-wolf and her cub does not see it as an imposition, he said cryptically. He sees it as his purpose. Wyatt, returning from settling Thunder in the small stable behind the trading post, overheard the remark and shot Two Feathers a warning look. The older man merely smiled and turned his attention to preparing pipes for the men to smoke. The evening passed pleasantly, with Marie's stew restoring their strength and spirits. Caleb, delighted by the attention and novelty, charmed everyone with his innocent questions and observations. For the first time since Thomas had left them, Zara saw her son truly relaxed and happy. After Caleb had fallen asleep on a pile of soft furs in the corner, Two Feathers leaned forward, his expression serious. Your pursuers. Tell me more about them. Wyatt explained about his confrontation with Harlan Blake's foreman in Cheyenne. Blake's a cattle baron with more money than sense and a mean streak a mile wide. His foreman tried to hang me for allegedly stealing horses. When I objected, he drew on me. I was faster. And now Blake seeks revenge, Two Feathers concluded. With hired guns, Wyatt confirmed. I recognized one of them earlier today, Frank Pullman, used to ride with the Barlow gang before they were wiped out. He's not the type to give up easily. Then you must be ready when they come, Two Feathers said simply. And they will come. Men like that always do. I don't want to bring trouble to your door, Wyatt insisted. We'll leave at first light. Two Feathers shook his head. The woman and child need rest. You need allies. My sons will return from hunting tomorrow. We will face these men together. Zara, who had been listening silently, finally spoke. I won't have anyone else dying because of us. We've lost enough already." Her voice trembled slightly, but her resolve was clear. "No one's dying," Wyatt assured her. "Two Feathers is right. We're stronger here than on the open trail." Later, as the others retired for the night, Zara found herself unable to sleep, despite the comfort of the first real bed she'd had in days. She rose quietly, careful not to disturb Caleb, and stepped outside onto the small porch of the trading post. The night was clear, stars blazing overhead in a tapestry of light. She wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders against the spring chill, breathing deeply of the clean mountain air. "Couldn't sleep?" Wyatt's voice came from the darkness. He emerged from the shadows, a familiar silhouette now. "Too much on my mind," Zara admitted. "Every time I close my eyes, I see wolves or imagine Thomas calling for help somewhere I can't reach him." Wyatt came to stand beside her, leaning against the porch railing. "The mind can be a terrible wilderness sometimes." "How do you quiet yours?" she asked. He considered the question. "I don't, really. Just learn to live with the noise." After a pause, he added, "Though it's been quieter these past few days." "Because of danger?" Zara asked. "The wolves, the men following us?" "No," Wyatt said softly. "Because of you and Caleb. Having someone to protect, it drowns out the other things." The admission hung between them, more intimate than anything they'd shared before. Zara turned to look at him, finding his eyes already on her face, his expression unguarded for the first time since they had met. "I've spent 3 years avoiding attachments," he continued, "telling myself it was better that way, safer. And now?" Zara's voice was barely above a whisper. "Now, I'm not so sure." He reached out tentatively, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. The touch sent warmth spreading through her, a feeling both foreign and familiar. "Wyatt," she began, uncertain what she wanted to say. He stepped back, the moment broken. "You should get some rest. Tomorrow will be challenging." Zara nodded, recognizing his retreat. "Good night, then." As she turned to go back inside, Wyatt spoke again. "Zara, whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know I don't regret finding you and Caleb. Not for a moment." She carried those words with her as she returned to bed, finding sleep more easily than she'd expected. Morning brought activity to the trading post as Two Feathers' sons returned from their hunting expedition. Strong and capable men in their 30s, they greeted the news of potential trouble with stoic determination, immediately beginning preparations to defend their home, if necessary. Wyatt spent the early hours with them, discussing strategy and examining the surrounding terrain for defensive positions. Zara kept Caleb occupied inside, helping Marie with various chores while trying not to dwell on the danger that approached. By mid-morning, Two Feathers' youngest son, Joseph, returned from scouting with news. 4 riders approaching from the south, heavily armed. They'll be here within the hour. Wyatt nodded grimly. "Just as I thought. Frank Pullman doesn't waste time." Two Feathers gathered everyone in the main room of the trading post. "We have 2 choices," he explained. "Fight or negotiate. These men want Wyatt, not the woman and child. Perhaps there is a way to resolve this without bloodshed." "Blake's men don't negotiate," Wyatt countered. "They've been paid to bring back my head, and that's what they intend to do." "Then we fight," Joseph declared, checking his rifle. Zara stepped forward. "No. There's been enough fighting already." She turned to Wyatt. "You saved us from the wolves. You brought us safely this far. I won't watch you die for us now." "What are you suggesting?" Wyatt asked, his eyes narrowing. "Let me talk to them," Zara said. "Woman to man, tell them you're not here, that we parted ways yesterday. Two Feathers can back my story." "They won't believe you," Wyatt argued. "And even if they did, they're not the type to leave witnesses." "It's worth trying," Marie interjected. "A mother with a small child might appeal to whatever humanity they have left." Debate continued until Two Feathers raised his hand for silence. "I have another solution," he said, "one that honors both courage and wisdom." His plan was simple but dangerous. Wyatt would appear to flee, drawing the pursuers away from the trading post and into a narrow canyon where Two Feathers' sons would be waiting in ambush. Not to kill unless absolutely necessary, but to disarm and discourage. "These men are motivated by money," Two Feathers reasoned. "If the risk becomes too great, they will abandon their pursuit. Few bounty hunters are willing to die for their payment. With time running short, they implemented the plan. Wyatt prepared to leave, checking his weapons one last time beside Thunder. "This is madness," Zara said, watching him with undisguised concern. "You're putting yourself directly in their path." "It's the only way to keep them away from you and Caleb," Wyatt replied. "Two Feathers and his sons know what they're doing. Trust them." "I trust you," Zara said simply. "That's what worries me." Wyatt paused, then reached for something in his saddlebag. "Hold on to this for me," he said, pressing a small object into her hand. It was a silver pocket watch, worn smooth with age. "It was my father's. I'll be coming back for it." Before she could respond, he swung into the saddle. Their eyes met one last time, volumes spoken in that silent exchange. Then he was gone, Thunder's hooves kicking up dust as they disappeared down the trail. Zara clutched the watch tightly, its weight solid and reassuring in her palm. Two Feathers' sons mounted their own horses and departed in different directions, taking positions for the ambush. Two Feathers himself led Zara and Caleb to a root cellar beneath the trading post. "You will be safe here," he assured them. "Marie will stay with you." The waiting was excruciating. Zara held Caleb close, telling him stories to keep him calm while straining to hear any sounds of conflict above. Marie sat nearby, her rosary beads clicking softly as she prayed. Minutes stretched into an hour, then longer. Suddenly, gunshots echoed in the distance, several in quick succession, then silence. "Mama, what was that?" Caleb asked, his eyes wide. "Just thunder, sweetheart," Zara lied, her heart pounding. "Remember the storm we sheltered from?" More shots followed, closer now. Then voices above them, heavy footsteps. Zara tensed, ready to protect Caleb at any cost. Marie moved to position herself between the cellar door and the children. The door opened, and Zara nearly cried out until she recognized Two Feathers' weathered face. "It is safe now," he said. "Come up." Emerging into the trading post's main room, Zara found Joseph tending to his brother's arm, where a bullet had grazed the flesh. Of Wyatt, there was no sign. "Where is he?" she demanded, fear clutching at her throat. "Where's Wyatt?" "He led them into the trap as planned," Joseph explained, not looking up from his work. "We managed to wound two of them and capture a third. The leader, this Pullman, escaped with Wyatt in pursuit." "Alone?" Zara couldn't keep the horror from her voice. Joseph nodded grimly. "He insisted, said it had to end, one way or another." Zara moved to the doorway, scanning the horizon as if she might spot them in the distance. The pocket watch felt heavy in her hand. "He promised he'd come back for this," she whispered. Two Feathers placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Then he will. Wyatt Andrews is a man of his word." The captured bounty hunter, secured in the trading post's storeroom, eventually revealed that Blake had offered $500 for Wyatt's capture or proof of his death, an enormous sum that explained their persistence. "Pullman won't give up easy," the man warned, almost admiring. "Not with that kind of money at stake." As the day waned with no sign of Wyatt, Zara grew increasingly restless. Caleb seemed to sense her anxiety, becoming clingy and irritable. By nightfall, she had made her decision. "I need to find him," she announced to Two Feathers. "He might be wounded, needing help." "It is too dangerous," the older man objected. "The night belongs to predators, both animal and human." "Wyatt risked everything for us," Zara countered. "I won't abandon him now." In the end, they compromised. Joseph would accompany Zara at first light, following the trail Wyatt and Pullman had left. Caleb would remain safely with Marie and Two Feathers. That night, as Zara tried unsuccessfully to sleep, she reflected on the strange twist of fate that had brought Wyatt Andrews into their lives. A man running from his past, reluctant to form attachments, yet willing to risk his life for strangers. A man who, in just a few days, had somehow become essential to her. She realized with startling clarity that she didn't want to continue to Oregon without him. The thought of Wyatt riding away once they reached Fort Laramie left her with an emptiness she hadn't expected. It wasn't gratitude she felt, or even the natural bond formed in danger. It was something deeper, something that had grown quietly but insistently between them. Morning came with a surprise. As Zara and Joseph prepared to depart, A rider appeared on the horizon. Zara's heart leaped, then plummeted as she recognized Thunder, but not his rider. The horse approached the trading post of his own accord, his saddle empty. "No," Zara breathed, clutching the porch railing for support. "Please, no." Joseph examined Thunder quickly. "No blood on the saddle," he reported. "And look, the reins have been deliberately tied to direct him back here. Wyatt sent him back intentionally." "But why?" Zara asked, both relieved and confused. "Where is he?" Their answer came within the hour, as a second rider appeared, Wyatt himself, mounted on an unfamiliar horse. Even at a distance, Zara could see he was injured, listing slightly in the saddle. She ran to meet him as he approached, Joseph close behind. Wyatt's face was bruised. A makeshift bandage wrapped around his left thigh, stained with blood. But his eyes, those guarded blue eyes, held something new as they found hers. Relief, joy, something more. "You're hurt," she said, as Joseph helped him dismount. "It's nothing," Wyatt assured her, though he winced as his weight settled on his injured leg. "Pullman was a better shot than I gave him credit for." "And Pullman?" Two Feathers asked, joining them. A shadow crossed Wyatt's face. "He won't be collecting any bounties, ever again." They helped him inside, where Marie immediately set about treating his wound. A bullet had passed through the fleshy part of his thigh, missing bone and major blood vessels. Painful, but not life-threatening. "You sent Thunder back," Zara said as she helped clean the injury. "Why?" Wyatt met her eyes. "Wanted to make sure you had a way to Fort Laramie in case I didn't make it back." The simple statement, delivered matter-of-factly, brought tears to Zara's eyes. "I was coming to find you," she told him. "At dawn, Joseph was going to help me." Something flickered in Wyatt's expression. Surprise, then a warmth that transformed his features. "You were?" "Of course I was," Zara said fiercely. "Did you think I'd just leave you out there?" Before he could answer, Caleb burst into the room, having escaped Marie's watchful eye. "Mr. Wyatt," he cried, running toward the injured man before Zara could intercept him. "You came back." Wyatt caught the boy before he could collide with his wounded leg, lifting him onto his good knee. "I promised your mama I would," he said, glancing at Zara. "I had something important to come back for." 2 days passed at the trading post, allowing Wyatt's injury to heal enough for travel. The captured bounty hunter was released with a clear message for Harlan Blake. The price for continuing his vendetta would be higher than any sum he was willing to pay. During those days, something shifted between Wyatt and Zara. The barriers he'd maintained began to fall, one by one. He told her more about his life before and during the war, about the years of wandering that followed his family's deaths. In turn, she shared her own story, her childhood on a Kentucky farm, not unlike his own, her marriage to Thomas more out of practicality than passion, her hopes for Caleb's future. In the evenings, they would sit on the trading post's porch, watching the stars emerge while Caleb slept inside. On the second night, Wyatt tentatively reached for her hand. When she didn't pull away, he entwined his fingers with hers. "I've been thinking about Fort Laramie," he said quietly, "about what happens when we get there." Zara's heart quickened. "And what have you decided?" "That I don't want to say goodbye," he admitted. "Not to you, not to Caleb." "Then don't," she replied simply. Wyatt turned to face her fully. "It won't be easy. I'm not a wealthy man. I've got no land, no real prospects. Just a horse, my guns, and a past that sometimes catches up with me." "We don't need wealth," Zara said. "Caleb and I just need someone who won't leave us, someone who will fight for us, as you already have." Wyatt's free hand came up to touch her cheek. "I thought I was done fighting," he murmured. "Until I heard those wolves and saw you standing there, protecting your son with nothing but broken wood and courage." This time, when he leaned toward her, there was no retreat. His lips met hers gently at first, then with growing certainty as she responded. It was a kiss of promise, of possibility, of a future neither had dared imagine days earlier. When they finally separated, Wyatt rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said, the words rusty with disuse but sincere. "Both of you. I think maybe I have since that first night by the fire." "I love you too," Zara whispered back, "and Caleb adores you already." On the morning of their departure, Two feathers presented them with supplies for their journey and a blessing in his native tongue. Marie hugged Zara tightly, slipping a small pouch of dried herbs into her hand. "For tea," she explained with a meaningful look. "Good for a woman's health and other matters." Her glance between Zara and Wyatt left no doubt as to her meaning. They set out for Fort Laramie with renewed purpose, not as strangers thrown together by circumstance, but as a family in the making. Wyatt rode Thunder with Caleb perched before him, delighting the boy with stories and teaching him how to hold the reins. Zara followed on the horse Wyatt had acquired during his confrontation with Pullman, a sturdy mare with a gentle disposition. The journey took 2 days, during which they encountered no further danger. At Fort Laramie, they learned that the wagon train had indeed continued west after sending out search parties for the Lawsons. The commander of the fort, an old acquaintance of Wyatt's from his scouting days, confirmed what they already suspected. Thomas Lawson's body had been found 3 weeks earlier, the victim of a flash flood that had swept through a canyon. "I'm sorry for your loss, Mrs. Lawson," the commander said kindly. "Your husband's personal effects are being held for you." Zara accepted the small bundle Thomas's pocket watch, a daguerreotype of herself and Caleb taken before their departure, wedding rings, mementos of a life now firmly in the past. That evening, in the privacy of the small room they had been assigned in the fort's visitors' quarters, Zara placed these items in her trunk. "For Caleb," she explained to Wyatt, "when he's older, so he'll know his father." Wyatt nodded, understanding the importance of such connections. "What will you tell him about us?" he asked, the question revealing his own uncertainty. Zara crossed the room to where he sat on the edge of the bed. "I'll tell him that his father loved him very much and wanted the best future for him," she said, taking Wyatt's hands in hers. "And that, when we lost his father, we were blessed to find another man who loves him just as deeply, a man who fought wolves and outlaws to keep us safe, a man who became his new father, not by birth, but by choice." Wyatt pulled her closer, burying his face against her waist. "I never thought I'd have a family again," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Neither did I," Zara admitted, stroking his hair. "At least, not one built on love rather than obligation." They stayed at Fort Laramie for 2 weeks, giving Wyatt's leg time to heal completely and making arrangements for their future. The commander offered Wyatt a position as a civilian scout for the fort, but he declined. "I've had my fill of military life," he explained to Zara, "and I don't want Caleb growing up on an army post." Instead, they decided to travel north to the Montana Territory, where land was available for homesteading, and Wyatt's skills as a hunter and horseman would serve them well. With their meager savings combined, Zara's carefully hoarded dollars from selling her family's farm in Kentucky and Wyatt's earnings from odd jobs, they purchased a wagon and supplies for the journey. The day before their departure, Wyatt disappeared into the fort's small settlement for several hours, returning with a small package wrapped in brown paper. "What's this?" Zara asked as he handed it to her. "Open it and see," he replied, an uncharacteristic nervousness in his manner. Inside, nestled in a bed of cotton, lay a simple gold band, not ornate or expensive, but solid and well-crafted. "Wyatt," Zara breathed, looking up at him in surprise. He knelt before her, taking her hand in his. "Zara Lawson, I know it's soon. I know some might say it's too soon. But life out here is uncertain, and one thing I am certain of is how I feel about you and Caleb." "Are you asking me to marry you?" Zara asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I am," Wyatt confirmed. "Not to replace what you had, but to build something new, something ours." Zara pulled him to his feet, her eyes shining. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, I will marry you, Wyatt Andrews." They were married the next morning in the fort's small chapel, with Caleb serving as both ring-bearer and best man, proudly carrying the ring on a small cushion the commander's wife had provided. The ceremony was brief but meaningful, witnessed by a handful of soldiers and settlers passing through the fort. As the chaplain pronounced them husband and wife, Wyatt looked down at Zara with a sense of wonder that this woman, this strong, beautiful, loving woman, had chosen him, had given him a second chance at happiness he never thought he'd find. "I love you, Mrs. Andrews," he whispered as he bent to kiss her. "And I love you, Mr. Andrews," she replied against his lips. Caleb tugged at their hands. "Does this mean I can call you Papa now?" he asked Wyatt earnestly. Wyatt knelt to the boy's level, his heart so full he could barely speak. "I would be honored," he managed finally, gathering Caleb into a tight embrace. They left Fort Laramie the following day, their wagon loaded with supplies and hopes for the future. The journey to Montana would be long and not without hardship, but they faced it together, a family forged in danger, bound by love. 5 years later, the Andrews homestead stood as a testament to determination and hard work. What had begun as a simple cabin and corral had expanded to include a proper house, a barn, and fenced pastures where a small herd of cattle grazed. Wyatt's knowledge of horses had proven valuable, and he'd developed a reputation for training quality mounts that brought buyers from as far away as Wyoming. Zara stood on the porch, watching as Wyatt taught 8-year-old Caleb how to gentle a spirited colt. The boy had his mother's blonde hair, but had developed Wyatt's quiet confidence and way with animals. Though not related by blood, the resemblance between man and boy sometimes startled Zara, proof that family was created by love, not merely biology. A soft cry from inside the house drew her attention. In the cradle beside the hearth, 2-year-old Emma stirred from her nap, her dark curls so like her father's tousled from sleep. Beside her, baby Sarah, just 6 months old, continued to slumber peacefully. Zara lifted Emma into her arms, carrying her to the doorway to watch Wyatt and Caleb. As if sensing their presence, Wyatt looked up, his face breaking into the smile that still made her heart race after all these years. He said something to Caleb, then crossed the yard to join his wife and daughter on the porch. "How are my girls?" he asked, placing a kiss on Emma's cheek, before drawing Zara close for a proper greeting. "Perfect," Zara replied. "As always." Wyatt's gaze swept over their homestead, then returned to her face. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Not continuing to Oregon? This life isn't what you planned when you set out with the wagon train." Zara leaned into his embrace, thinking of the long journey that had brought them here, of wolves in the twilight and a stranger's courage, of a silver pocket watch and a promise kept, of love found in the most unlikely circumstances. "This life is better than anything I could have planned," she assured him. "It may not be the Willamette Valley, but it's home. It's ours." In the distance, wolves howled, a sound that once meant terror, but now was simply part of the wilderness they had tamed together. Wyatt's arm tightened around her, a gesture both protective and possessive. "Ours," he agreed, the word of vow renewed. "Always."